Thank you, Tom, and thank you for the invitation. I must first say at the outset that my views expressed tonight are not those necessarily of my institution. So they are my own. But thank you, Tom, for the invitation. Great to be here and speak on this issue. This issue, to me, is like a broken record. Right then I usually have to stop with my students because they don't know what a record is. And that thing that plays music in your, I gotta explain my idiom to them first. But once we get past that, I can explain the idea that the arguments that are put forth for initiatives like these seem to keep coming up again and again, despite being refuted in the past. And this new initiative still has no grounding in economic theory, political economy, or correct moral reasoning. So before you tonight, I will argue that the initiative here, particularly with the indexing part of the proposal, has no grounding in the economic theory or data, does not include any political concessions that would make it more acceptable to employers, and is unjustified by straight moral reasoning. So these such initiatives as these definitely talk, usually, most often, about there will be no loss of jobs, and we might actually see higher earnings. Unfortunately, the statistical science behind all the research that is cited by such proponents is far from conclusive. For example, there's data from research done by professors at University of Massachusetts Amherst and other schools that used county-level data to study restaurants and other low-wage industries about the minimum wage. They determined in that study that there were no employment effects from minimum wage increases. However, the authors go on to say that several factors warrant caution in applying these results. For example, they say that their results should not be extrapolated to predict the impact of a minimum wage increase that is much larger than what we studied and we experienced over the period under study. And the period under study did not include indexing. It was 1990 to 2006. The federal rate in particular was raised just a few times over that period, so the sample size was relatively small. Moreover, this same research that is widely used by proponents was published in 2010, but the statistical methodology was shown to be flawed by the National Bureau of Economic Research, published just last year in 2014. The authors also say that they did not test whether restaurants respond to minimum wage increases by hiring more skilled workers and fewer less skilled ones. And economic theory predicts just that. So even if we accept the research that says employment levels will not decline, the bigger economic consequences of a higher minimum wage is a reduction in employee benefits or hours worked, particularly for those at the bottom of the wage scale. While some employers may reduce labor by increasing capital investments, other firms can be expected to reduce the employees' non-wage benefits and/or their hours worked. A minimum wage increase induces employers to drop or reduce health insurance benefits, increasing the number of uninsured in our economy. Economist John Schmidt from the Center for Economic and Policy Research cited this exact possibility in a 2013 report that, again, many proponents of wage increases use. So he actually predicted lower benefits, less hour work. There's a striking example of this fact in the federal data. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average weekly hours worked by production and non-supervisory employers in the leisure and hospitality industry has declined from 33 in 1965 to only 25 today, all the time while the national minimum wage was going up. So Professor David Murphy at Texas Tech University has this to say about the ongoing economic research on minimum wage laws. I quote, many economists who currently support large minimum wage hikes claim that the best research now shows that such an increase would not cause significant drops in employment. However, the conclusion relies on a dubious reading of the literature. So, as the doctor who takes an oath to do no harm, we too should not make economic policy based on very inconclusive research. So that's the economic argument. The political argument requires trade-offs. All political actions and initiatives require some kind of trade-off. In my experience, however, proponents of increases in the minimum wage rarely argue that taxes on businesses that are used to pay for other social programs should be reduced in response to raising the minimum wage. But political economy requires such a more balanced proposal. So, for example, if it's said that it's a conservative argument that raising the minimum wage will reduce social spending, well, if that's true, then we should reduce the taxes that are used to fund such social programs. But in fact, that's not what's going to happen. The income-based programs such as food stamps or Medicaid would not change. Raising the minimum wage would not change the income eligibility for those programs, particularly with the indexing clause, because the same programs are adjusted for inflation. Furthermore, the amount employers are required to make in FICA or SUTA payments will rise under this new law. So are we willing to reduce the employer's share of payroll taxes and unemployment insurance in response to requiring them to pay higher wages? So if we are to be realistic about the political environment today, any proposal to raise the minimum wage must be accompanied by a reduction in employer taxes and/or increases in the eligibility requirements under current government social programs. Another political problem with raising the minimum wage is the consequence of higher income inequality over time. The higher cost of labor resulting from an increase in the minimum wage creates the incentive for business owners to use more capital. Employers that are unable to legally hire low-wage workers substitute more capital in their production process or in their services. As French economist Thomas Piketty has shown, using international data, when the returns to capital exceed the rate of growth in the economy, income inequality rises. Thus, as more businesses substitute capital for labor, we can expect the political hot-button issue of income inequality to actually worsen with higher minimum wages. So those are the political problems. But I conclude with the moral issues surrounding this question. The moral problem with increasing the minimum wage includes decreasing opportunities for younger workers, as well as the questionable moral authority that governments may have to mandate prices for businesses and individuals alike. Empirical research has demonstrated that any employment effects on higher minimum wages fall disproportionately on low-skilled workers, who in turn are mostly younger. Again, back to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, only 1 in 40 over the age of 25 earned the federal minimum wage or less in 2014. So an increase in the minimum wage can thereby be characterized as a redistribution of income from younger workers to older workers. So it begs the question, do we have a moral right to burden this segment of the labor force when we have already done so with other unfunded liabilities in government social programs? Proponents of a hike in the minimum wage requirements often use a moral argument when they claim any social or ethical responsibility for businesses and corporations. It is said, particularly with regards to large corporations, that they have a responsibility to pay workers more. It's simple justice, they say. If, however, you impose a moral obligation on a particular group, which a corporation is, in fact, then logically you must impose the same on all groups. Otherwise, we are guilty of showing partiality in justice, which is immoral. Yale University professor of law, Stephen Carter, frames the question this way. So suppose great big company has a retail center in your town and pays its employees slightly more than the minimum wage. Suddenly, the minimum wage is increased, and great big company decides to close its store and move elsewhere because its employees are, in turn, asking for higher wages. Has the company committed a moral wrong against its employees? If you answer yes to this question, Do you feel the same way about a family that decides it can no longer afford to pay for lawn care or snow shoveling, and it hands the keys to the mower and the snow blower back to their kids and away from the service that they previously hired? At any rate, Professor Carter's logic shows that the moral case for higher minimum wages is only invalid if it's imposed on everyone. Furthermore, if we determine we do have a moral right to tell people what to pay for labor services, we then must also have a moral justification for any or all prices. We will find a moral reason for fixing gasoline prices, food prices, land prices. Again, proper moral reasoning requires consistent and impartial application of the rules based on the underlying ethics. So, in conclusion, let's stop playing the broken record. An increase in the minimum wage will hurt the economy, exacerbate other political issues of the day, such as business taxes and income inequality, and has no moral grounding. I appreciate your attention and your consideration of my arguments. I look forward to your questions later. Thank you.